Stories about child actresses often follow a path of heartache, and Linda Darnell's life is a prime example of this sorrowful pattern. Adored by Hollywood for her ethereal beauty, she became a rising star, but beneath the surface she grappled with the industry's treacherous realities. No matter how hard she tried to find peace, happiness always seemed just out of reach. With a face often described as perfect, Darnell captivated audiences. Yet her life ended in an unimaginably brutal tragedy. Even more devastating, her tragic demise came down to a single catastrophic moment. Darnell was born into a large family, but her early life was far from harmonious. Her mother, Margaret Pearl Brown, had 2 children from a previous marriage before she wed Linda's father, Calvin Roy Darnell. Together, the couple had 4 more children, including Linda. Life in their crowded household was chaotic, marked by petty rivalries, frequent arguments, and a deeply unhappy marriage between Margaret and Calvin. These turbulent family dynamics left a lasting imprint on Linda as she embarked on her Hollywood journey. Darnell's home environment was far from a source of comfort, especially with her mother, Pearl, who played a major role in making things worse. Darnell, a shy child in a large family, was caught in the midst of a chaotic situation. Pearl, instead of nurturing her child's own desires, became completely fixated on turning Darnell into a movie star. She was relentless in her pursuit, going so far as to ignore her other children entirely in order to focus all her attention and energy on Darnell's potential career. For Darnell, this was a difficult situation. Still too young to have a clear idea of what she wanted to do with her life, she found herself forced into a future that her mother had chosen for her. Even worse, Darnell couldn't believe in herself. She once shared her feelings by saying, "I had no great talent, and I didn't want to be a movie star particularly. But Mother had always wanted it for herself, and I guess she attained it through me." Darnell sacrificed greatly for the sake of her mother's dream. Her childhood, consumed by the pursuit of fame, came at the cost of her own happiness, leaving her feeling lonely and isolated. At school, she found it difficult to make friends, as her life revolved around goals far removed from those of her peers. She missed out on major milestones, such as attending her high school graduation or pursuing higher education. Instead, she spent her youth on stage, working tirelessly to support her family, a situation that even began to raise eyebrows within the industry. By the time she was just 13, Darnell had already become a veteran stage performer. However, her mother, Pearl, was unsatisfied and continually pushed her to achieve more. Pearl's ultimate goal was for Darnell to break into the film industry, and when her daughter turned 14, she began campaigning to make her a Hollywood actress. Yet, even the notoriously exploitative studios of Hollywood initially balked at Pearl's ambition, deeming Darnell far too young for the screen. Their hesitation, however, would prove temporary. A year after her initial audition, they signed her, and thus began the downward spiral. At just 15 years old, the naive and impressionable Darnell left home and moved into a Hollywood apartment completely alone in pursuit of becoming a silver screen star, a dream shared by countless other young girls of her generation. As fate would have it, Darnell caught a lucky break early on. Her debut film, Hotel for Women, turned out to be a major success, and the teenage actress was quickly touted as up and coming, with the industry beginning to take notice of her talent. However, a significant obstacle soon arose. While Darnell was officially working as a studio actress at 15, many producers still saw her as too young for the seductive roles she aspired to play. To overcome this barrier, Darnell initially claimed to be 17. Not stopping there, the studio added to the deception by further inflating her age, publicly promoting her as a fully grown 19-year-old. This calculated fabrication was undeniably disturbing, but shockingly, it was far from the worst aspect of her early Hollywood experience. The studio was fully aware that Linda Darnell was underage, yet they made a deliberate decision to lie about her age to push her into the spotlight. For Darnell, this deceit set her on a dangerously slippery slope. Entering the entertainment industry at such a young and vulnerable age made her an easy target for exploitation, and the pressures she faced were immense. One columnist poignantly described her as so young, so immature, and so naive in her ideas, highlighting her innocence and lack of worldly experience. Unfortunately, Darnell's inability to distinguish between true friends and those who sought to exploit her only deepened her struggles. By the time she began to understand the manipulative forces at play in her life, it was already far too late for her to reclaim the sense of security and agency she had lost. Darnell had complete trust in her boss, studio executive DarrylFZanuck, who gave her the opportunity to star in her first film. However, it wasn't until much later that she realized Zanuck had an unsettling obsession with her. He turned out to be quite manipulative and creepy, pursuing Darnell even though he was fully aware of her underage status. He was skilled at using his power, casting her in prominent roles whenever she complied and remained agreeable to him. Darnell managed to claw her way out of the darkness, but she did not emerge unscathed. Her time in Hollywood became a unique form of education, one that came with its own set of challenges. Her breathtaking beauty proved to be both a blessing and a curse. Unlike most teenagers, Darnell never experienced the so-called awkward phase of adolescence. Instead, she was consistently praised for her flawless appearance, with her Latin features, dark hair, and expressive eyes drawing widespread admiration. Publications often celebrated her looks, dubbing her the girl with a perfect face. Her striking appearance set her apart from her peers, but it also added immense pressure to maintain an idealized image. Life magazine went so far as to claim that Darnell looks 23 rather than her actual age of 16, boldly declaring her the most physically perfect girl in Hollywood. While these accolades elevated her profile, they also underscored how much her identity and career were defined by her physical appearance, for better or worse. With her grown-up looks, it's no surprise that Darnell was cast in roles meant for much older actresses. In 1939, she starred alongside the wildly popular Tyrone Power in Daytime Wife, playing none other than Power's on-screen spouse, a casting choice made even more striking by the fact that Power was nearly 10 years her senior. Although this was only her second film, it established a pattern that would define the rest of her career, one characterized by the industry's exploitation of her youth and maturity. Zanuck, who had already been eyeing Linda Darnell with clear ulterior motives, seized the opportunity to exploit her further. In 1940, Darnell was cast alongside Tyrone Power once again in Brigham Young, a film that achieved significant success largely due to the immense popularity of their on-screen chemistry. Recognizing the public's fascination with the pair, Zanuck deliberately added extra romantic scenes between them, not only to attract more viewers, but also, it seemed, to satisfy his own questionable interests. As unsettling as Zanuck's behavior was, it undeniably paid off. The film turned out to be an instant sensation, elevating Darnell to an entirely new level of stardom. At the time, Brigham Young was said to be the most expensive production 20th Century Fox had ever undertaken. Its overwhelming success not only solidified Darnell's reputation as a sought-after actress, but also marked a turning point in her financial status, as she began earning substantial sums of money thanks to her rising fame. After starring in this standout film, Darnell was reportedly earning more than most bank officials, a testament to her rising stardom. However, the fleeting nature of youth loomed over her, and her time in the limelight came at a great personal cost. Growing up in the public eye deeply affected her self-esteem, leaving lasting scars on her confidence. Although celebrated as the most physically perfect girl in the world, Darnell became increasingly distrustful of people and their praise. She reflected on the impact of her career, saying, "In pictures, you're built up by everyone. Everyone says you're wonderful. It gives you a false sense of security." These words revealed the emotional burden of maintaining a perfect image while grappling with the complexities of trust and self-worth. As Darnell had feared, the sense of security she once felt was painfully short-lived. Just a few years after her impressive debut, she suddenly found herself struggling to find work. The charm and magic that had once made her a rising star seemed to have faded, and being young and beautiful was no longer enough to guarantee her place in the industry. On one side, 20th Century Fox grappled with the challenge of finding her roles that were fresh and exciting enough to sustain her momentum. On the other side, the silver screen audience was beginning to see her as yesterday's news, favoring newer faces and fresher talent. This unfortunate combination of factors marked a sharp decline in her once promising career. Darnell's career challenges were compounded by the persistent interference of her boss, Zanuck, who became an increasingly bold obstacle as time went on. Despite her growing professionalism and determination to succeed, his advances grew more aggressive, and when Darnell continued to reject him, his retaliation took a devastating toll. Instead of supporting her, he actively began to sabotage her prospects, standing firmly in the way of her career progression. As public interest in Darnell's talent and screen presence gradually declined, Zanuck's attitude shifted entirely. His personal grudge against her led him to completely disregard her for future roles, leaving her sidelined and struggling to maintain her place in the competitive world of Hollywood. If Zanuck's toxic influence had left a lasting mark on Darnell's life, it was nothing compared to the damage inflicted by her mother, Pearl. Even as Darnell cemented her place as a Hollywood star, Pearl refused to relinquish control, constantly meddling in her career and criticizing her every move. Her suffocating behavior earned her a reputation in Hollywood as an overbearing and possessive mother who couldn't let her daughter live her own life. However, Pearl's actions went far beyond mere interference. In 1940, she made a devastating and scandalous accusation against her husband that would shatter Darnell's already fragile world, plunging her into an even deeper nightmare. In 1940, just as Darnell's career was on the rise, her mother, Pearl, made a devastating accusation that would change their family forever. Pearl claimed that her husband was involved in an inappropriate relationship with one of his stepdaughters. This shocking allegation caused a deep rift within the family, creating an atmosphere of bitterness and hostility. The tension only worsened over time, and by 1942, Darnell could no longer endure the constant conflict between her parents. In a courageous decision, she took her younger sister and left home, never to return. This painful chapter marked a turning point in Darnell's personal life, as she distanced herself from a fractured family to find peace. Tragically, Darnell made a devastating misstep. In her attempt to escape the toxic grip of her family's drama, she underestimated just how far her mother, Pearl, would go for revenge. After years of grooming Darnell to be a star, Pearl refused to let her daughter walk away so easily. If she couldn't control her anymore, Pearl decided she would ruin her instead. She took all the details of their family conflicts, secrets and all, and handed them over to the press. The media, hungry for scandal and drama, eagerly embraced the story, tarnishing Darnell's reputation in the public eye. Darnell's troubles didn't end with the bad publicity stirred up by her mother. In fact, her challenges only multiplied. By 1942, she was still carrying the weight of countless pressures, and matters took an even more alarming turn when she became the target of blackmail. An unidentified person threatened her with demands for $2,000, warning that she would face bodily harm if she failed to pay. Understandably shaken, Darnell's studio took the matter seriously and brought in the FBI to investigate the case. After an intense probe, the truth finally came to light. The culprit was revealed to be none other than a high school student with far too much time on their hands. Darnell's struggles were deeply rooted in the toxic environment she faced in her workplace. By 1943, she had grown increasingly frustrated with the lack of challenging roles offered to her by 20th Century Fox, and wasn't afraid to speak up about it. However, her outspokenness didn't sit well with the studio. In a calculated move to retaliate, they decided to give her exactly what she was trying to avoid. As a form of punishment, they loaned her out to another studio to take on a supporting role in a low-budget B-movie, a far cry from the roles she aspired to play. What was meant to be a punishment ended up having an unexpected and positive outcome. The B-movie that Darnell's studio assigned her to was the 1943 film City Without Men. Surprisingly, Darnell found herself enjoying the experience. She felt valued in the new environment, where she was treated with respect and recognized as a serious actress rather than a mere child. This was a stark contrast to her experiences at 20th Century Fox, where she had often been regarded as little more than a young starlet. Sadly, 20th Century Fox wasted no time in shattering any contentment Darnell had managed to find. When relegating her to a B-movie failed to send the intended message, the studio escalated its efforts by suspending her in April 1943. Even after the suspension was lifted, Darnell's career continued to suffer. The once prominent leading lady was now reduced to supporting roles, when she was fortunate enough to be cast at all. There were also more questionable reasons behind her suspension. In April 1943, Darnell eloped with Peveril Marley, a cameraman she had worked with, and their marriage stirred plenty of disapproval. Zanuck, likely fueled by jealousy over his former favorite, retaliated harshly by suspending her. To make matters worse, the critics may have had a valid argument. Marley, at 42 years old, was more than twice Darnell's age, and could have easily been her father. The challenges didn't stop there. Beyond the glaring age gap between them, Marley introduced habits into Darnell's life that would lead her down a dark path. At 42, Marley was no stranger to heavy drinking, and under his influence, Darnell fell into the same destructive pattern. What started as casual indulgence spiraled into a full-fledged drinking problem, one that soon began to take its toll on her both personally and professionally. The transformation was hard to miss. The once mild and composed Darnell began exhibiting troubling behavior, with her temper flaring in ways that shocked those who knew her. The poised starlet, who had always maintained an air of grace, was now prone to public outbursts and erratic mood swings. On top of that, her celebrated figure, which had been the envy of many, started to change dramatically as the effects of her new lifestyle became more apparent. What had once been a story of rising stardom was now overshadowed by whispers of concern and disappointment. Friends, colleagues, and fans alike couldn't help but notice the stark difference in the woman they once admired. This period marked a turning point in Darnell's life, where the personal demons she faced began to cast long shadows over her career and reputation. Despite the physical and emotional toll her marriage had taken on her, Darnell's career was poised for a major breakthrough that would redefine her place in Hollywood. By 1944, she had been yearning for a change, desperate to shed the good-natured, innocent roles that had defined her early work. That year, she finally seized the opportunity she had been waiting for, a complete transformation of her on-screen image. The film Summer Storm presented Darnell with a character unlike any she had played before. Gone was the sweet and naive persona audiences had grown accustomed to. Instead, she took on the role of Olga, a cunning and seductive femme fatale whose allure and manipulative nature drove the story forward. This character allowed Darnell to dive into a more complex and layered performance, showcasing her range as an actress. For Darnell, it was not just about playing a new type of role. It was a chance to prove to herself and to Hollywood that she was capable of so much more than the stereotypes she had been assigned. The challenge of portraying Olga was one Darnell embraced wholeheartedly. She poured herself into the role, reveling in the chance to explore the darker, more enigmatic facets of her talent. For audiences and critics alike, her performance in Summer Storm was a revelation. It was a clear turning point in her career, as she began to move away from the confines of being typecast and toward roles that allowed her to shine as a dynamic and versatile actress. After managing to revamp her public image with the critically acclaimed Summer Storm, Darnell's career seemed to gain a second wind. She expanded her repertoire, taking on roles in a wide range of genres, including the ever-popular westerns that dominated Hollywood at the time. Among these films was the iconic My Darling Clementine, a project that marked not just a highlight in her acting career, but also a turning point in her personal life. During the filming of My Darling Clementine, Darnell crossed paths with Howard Hughes, the famously wealthy and enigmatic businessman who was as notorious for his womanizing ways as he was for his fortune. Their relationship quickly became the subject of intrigue, with Darnell drawn to Hughes's magnetic charm and his high-flying lifestyle. This romance added yet another layer of drama and complexity to her life, intertwining her rising stardom with the allure and chaos of one of Hollywood's most talked-about figures. Hughes's reputation preceded him, and it was far from flattering. When Darnell became entangled with him, she unwittingly stepped into a whirlwind of chaos and heartbreak. Known for his relentless pursuit of Hollywood's most glamorous women, Hughes had a long and infamous track record of romantic escapades. His charm and wealth allowed him to move effortlessly through the elite circles of the entertainment world, but his behavior often left destruction in its wake. For Hughes, boundaries seemed non-existent. He pursued women who were already in relationships with the same ease as those who were unattached, showing little regard for the commitments of others. To make matters worse, Hughes rarely limited himself to one woman at a time. His life was a tangled web of overlapping affairs, with each conquest further solidifying his reputation as a man who saw love and loyalty as mere inconveniences. For Darnell, stepping into this volatile mix meant navigating the dangerous waters of his unpredictable and often self-serving behavior. The allure of his status and charisma might have been difficult to resist, but the cost of being part of Hughes's world was far greater than it seemed at first glance. Darnell's close friend and fellow actress, Ann Miller, who had her own troubling experiences with Howard Hughes, stepped in with a heartfelt warning. She knew all too well the kind of man Hughes was, charming yet unpredictable, with a knack for leaving a trail of broken hearts in his wake. Drawing from her personal encounters, Miller tried to open Darnell's eyes to the reality of the situation. She told her in no uncertain terms that Hughes had an infamously short attention span when it came to women. According to Miller, he was the type to lavish attention and affection at first, only to discard his latest interest as soon as something or someone new came along. Despite Miller's earnest attempt to protect her friend, Darnell was unwilling to listen. Whether it was her youthful optimism, her stubborn streak, or her desire to believe she could be the exception to Hughes's rule, Darnell brushed off the warning. She convinced herself that her connection with Hughes was different, choosing to ignore the red flags and dive headfirst into the relationship. Little did she realize, Miller's words would soon prove heartbreakingly prophetic. As many might have predicted, Hughes left Darnell utterly devastated. The actress had been prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, dismantling her marriage to build a future with him. However, Hughes, infamous for his inability to truly commit, had no intention of taking their relationship to such a serious level. He brushed off her hopes and dashed her dreams with a cold rejection. Darnell, left with nowhere else to turn, was forced to crawl back to her husband, a move that was as painful as it was humiliating. The homecoming was nothing short of agonizing, rife with tension and unspoken truths. Every glance, every moment in that household carried the weight of her betrayal and the sting of unfulfilled desires. It wasn't just awkward. It was the kind of emotional turmoil that left deep scars, marking a turning point in her life that would haunt her for years to come. Darnell had spent years advocating for more complex and challenging roles, and in 1947, her persistence finally paid off with the lead in Forever Amber. The film was a grand production, promising to showcase her talents in ways she had long desired. However, this opportunity came with an extraordinary set of challenges that turned the experience into a trial by fire. For starters, she was placed under the direction of Otto Preminger, a filmmaker renowned for his brilliance, but also infamous for his authoritarian and intimidating style on set. Preminger was not one to shy away from pushing his actors to their limits, often employing a demanding and uncompromising approach to achieve his vision. For Darnell, who was already under immense pressure to prove herself, this was both an opportunity and a burden. But the situation became even more complicated on a deeply personal level. Working alongside her as the film's cinematographer was her husband, J. Peveril Marley. Their relationship was already in turmoil due to her recent infidelity, and the tension between them threatened to spill over into the professional sphere. The combination of Preminger's exacting nature and the unresolved personal conflict with Marley created a charged atmosphere on set, one that felt as if it could explode at any moment. Despite these obstacles, Forever Amber represented a pivotal moment in Darnell's career. The role allowed her to step into the spotlight as the lead in a high-profile film, giving her the opportunity to demonstrate her range as an actress. Yet the behind-the-scenes drama added a layer of complexity to an already demanding project, turning what should have been a triumphant experience into an emotionally fraught ordeal. For Darnell, Forever Amber was not just a role, it was a test of her resilience and her ability to persevere in the face of extraordinary challenges. As anticipated, the set was an intense and challenging environment, but Darnell rose to the occasion with extraordinary determination. Taking her role as Amber very seriously, she committed herself to a rigorous preparation process to bring authenticity to the character. This included adhering to a strict diet to maintain the appearance the role demanded and dedicating herself to voice training to master a convincing English accent, a significant departure from her natural speaking voice. Beyond these efforts, Darnell underwent a striking physical transformation. Known for her dark, Latin-inspired beauty, she had to shed her signature image entirely. Amber, a quintessential Englishwoman, required her to adopt a look characterized by fiery red hair, a feature central to the character's identity. This transformation was not just about appearance. It symbolized Darnell's willingness to push boundaries and embrace the artistic challenges that came her way. Her meticulous preparation underscored her commitment to her craft, proving she was far more than just a Hollywood starlet. She was an actress striving for depth and authenticity in every role. Portraying Amber in Forever. Amber was an ordeal that pushed Linda Darnell to her absolute limits, taking a toll on both her body and spirit. The film's production was nothing short of grueling, with Darnell subjected to relentless pressures that left little room for rest or self-care. To meet the role's demanding aesthetic standards, she was placed on an extreme dieting regimen, depriving her body of essential nutrients and energy. The punishing schedule and physical strain led to her collapsing twice on set, alarming the crew and highlighting just how much she was overexerting herself. Despite her dedication and sacrifices, the outcome was heartbreakingly underwhelming. When the film was released, it failed to live up to the high expectations set for it. Critics and audiences were lukewarm in their reception, a bitter blow to Darnell, who had poured so much of herself into the role. The disappointment of Forever Amber was more than just a professional setback. It was a deeply personal one, leaving her disheartened and questioning the immense cost of her efforts. Surprisingly, the turbulence in their marriage found a brief reprieve. For Darnell and Marley, their work together unexpectedly served as a form of couples therapy. Following the completion of Forever Amber, the pair managed to reconcile and sought to rebuild their fractured relationship. Determined to create a fresh chapter in their lives, they made the life-changing decision to become parents. In 1948, the couple adopted a baby girl, whom they lovingly named Charlotte Mildred Marley, affectionately called Lola. The adoption symbolized their hope for a renewed bond and a brighter future as a family. Just as it seemed like things were beginning to stabilize, Darnell betrayed her husband once more. If there was one consistent pattern in Linda Darnell's life, it was her unfortunate tendency to choose the wrong man. Not long after she and Marley adopted their daughter, Darnell became involved with JosephLMankiewicz, the acclaimed director of A Letter to Three Wives, the film that marked one of the greatest critical successes of her career. Her relationship with Mankiewicz added yet another layer of complexity to her already turbulent personal life, intertwining her professional and private worlds in ways that would have lasting repercussions. At the time, Mankiewicz was married to Austrian actress Rose Stradner, but that detail didn't seem to stand in the way, neither for him nor for Darnell. Caught in the whirlwind of their romance, she once again found herself considering divorce, convinced that this time her love story would have a happy ending. But history seemed determined to repeat itself, and Darnell faced yet another heartbreak. Deeply infatuated, Darnell gave everything to her relationship with Mankiewicz, investing her heart and soul into what she believed was her chance at lasting happiness. Unfortunately, it proved to be a painful miscalculation. Despite their years together, Mankiewicz made it painfully clear that he had no intention of leaving his wife. Yet Darnell couldn't walk away. For 6 tumultuous years, she remained devoted to him, enduring the emotional toll of an unfulfilled love while clinging to the belief that he was the great love of her life. This relationship, filled with longing and unreciprocated promises, became a defining chapter in Darnell's personal life. Her unwavering commitment to a man unwilling to commit to her in return painted a poignant picture of vulnerability and passion. It was a stark reflection of her struggle to find stability and the deep yearning for connection that seemed to elude her at every turn. For Joseph Mankiewicz, his relationship with Linda Darnell was an entirely different story, one he seemed reluctant to fully acknowledge. While Darnell was emotionally invested in their turbulent affair, Mankiewicz not only kept their involvement a secret from the public, but also referred to her in a dismissive and troubling manner. He once described her as a marvelous girl with very terrifying personal problems, a statement that starkly contrasted the deep struggles she faced during their time together. The emotional toll of their relationship was devastating for Darnell, as it pushed her already fragile mental health into dangerous territory. She became consumed by spiraling depression, the weight of which eventually led her to seek therapy in 1949, a brave yet heartbreaking testament to how much she was suffering. That same year, Mankiewicz dealt her another blow by ending their relationship to focus on his career, leaving Darnell shattered. The breakup sent her into such a profound state of despair that she came alarmingly close to taking her own life. It was a tragic reflection of the immense emotional pain she endured in the wake of their ill-fated romance. Darnell wasn't able to break free from Marley's shadow until the mid-1950s, and by that time their marriage had long since deteriorated beyond repair. On July 19, 1950, she agreed to a separation, but it came at a steep cost, both emotionally and financially. Marley didn't put up a fight over her rumored relationship with Mankiewicz or any other grievances. Instead, he demanded something far more tangible, a hefty settlement of $125,000, a staggering amount that nearly drove Darnell to financial ruin. Despite the financial blow, Darnell forged ahead. Just a year later, she officially filed for divorce and wasn't shy about airing her grievances. During a brief 5-minute hearing, she accused Marley of being unkind and overly critical, not only toward her, but also toward her family. It was a bold move, showcasing her determination to regain control of her life. In the end, her persistence paid off. The court granted her the divorce she desperately wanted, along with full custody of their adopted daughter, Lola. To add to her triumph, Marley was ordered to pay child support, a rare victory that allowed Darnell to claim a sense of justice after years of turmoil. While the settlement had strained her finances, Darnell's newfound freedom marked a turning point as she began the next chapter of her life unburdened by her toxic marriage. Truly, like mother, like daughter. Linda Darnell's tumultuous marriages mirrored the troubled dynamics of her parents' relationship, reflecting patterns of instability and emotional conflict that seemed impossible to escape. By the early 1950s, her career had also begun to lose momentum, with fewer significant film roles coming her way. Then, in 1952, a major turning point arrived. Her long-standing contract with 20th Century Fox came to an end after 13 years. At first, Darnell greeted this change with excitement and optimism. She believed that her newfound independence would open doors to opportunities abroad, envisioning a flourishing career in Europe, where she could reinvent herself and prove her worth on her own terms. Finally, she thought, this was her chance to step out of the shadow of the studio system and take control of her future. However, reality quickly shattered her aspirations. Venturing out on her own turned out to be far more challenging than she had anticipated. Without the backing of 20th Century Fox, she struggled to secure new roles, and her initial confidence gave way to frustration and regret. Before long, Darnell began to resent the studio, not for ending her contract, but for failing to see her value and fighting to keep her. This bitterness was likely exacerbated by her inability to find consistent work elsewhere, as she realized just how difficult it was to navigate the industry without the support she had taken for granted. What Darnell had hoped would be a liberating new chapter in her life instead became a harsh lesson in the realities of independence. Her struggle to rebuild her career revealed the fragility of her stardom and marked the beginning of a more uncertain phase in her life, filled with both challenges and introspection. Darnell's career continued to decline through the 1950s and 1960s as she struggled to regain her footing as an actress. In an effort to revive her star power, she traveled to Europe and appeared in a handful of films. Unfortunately, these projects failed to reignite her career, leaving her professional future as uncertain as ever. Returning to Hollywood, she began accepting roles in films backed by her former lovers, Howard Hughes and Joseph Mankiewicz, a clear indication of how dire her circumstances had become. She even returned briefly to 20th Century Fox, which had shifted its focus toward television by that time, but the opportunities offered little in the way of a comeback. In her final attempt to rebuild her career, Darnell returned to the stage, pouring her remaining passion into theater work. However, fate had other plans, and her acting career was soon cut short in the most tragic of ways. On the personal front, Darnell entered her third and final marriage in 1957 to pilot Merle Roy Robertson. Sadly, their union was overshadowed by the immense personal struggles Darnell was enduring. By this time, her long-standing battle with depression had resurfaced with full force. Despair and frustration led her to fall back into self-destructive patterns, including heavy drinking and an increasing dependence on unhealthy coping mechanisms. Her declining mental health not only strained her marriage but also marked the beginning of the darkest period of her life. After attending rehab, Linda Darnell began to show signs of recovery, but her struggles with instability were far from over. Her husband at the time, Merle Robertson, bore the brunt of her emotional turmoil. In a bitter turn of events that mirrored her mother's confrontational ways, Darnell made sure Robertson regretted their union. Accusing him of infidelity, she claimed he had cheated on her with a Polish actress and fathered an illegitimate child. The accusations culminated in a dramatic courtroom showdown where Darnell made her grievances public. Emerging victorious, she secured the divorce she sought, but her personal victory was overshadowed by the deep scars left by the ordeal. Tragically, Darnell's resurgence was heartbreakingly short-lived. On the evening of April 8, 1965, she visited the home of her former secretary, Jean Curtis. Together with Jean and her teenage daughter, Patty, the trio spent the night watching Stardust, one of Darnell's most beloved films from the 1940s that had catapulted her to fame. Watching her younger self on screen stirred deep nostalgia in Darnell, and she began sharing stories of her golden years in Hollywood. The night was filled with laughter and reminiscing, a fleeting moment of joy for a woman who had endured so much. But the warm glow of memory soon gave way to a tragic end. The serene evening was about to take a tragic and unforeseen turn. Darnell was spending the night at Curtis's house, seemingly enjoying a quiet respite. However, at 3:30 a.m., the stillness was shattered when little Patty woke her mother Jean, complaining about an unbearable heat. Confused but alarmed, Jean quickly realized the horrifying truth. A fire had broken out in the living room, where they had spent time earlier that evening. Darnell, ever the composed presence, remained calm in the face of panic. She instructed Jean to get Patty out first, urging her to use a second-floor window as an escape route. Jean followed through, helping Patty climb out. Though the little girl suffered a broken leg from the fall, she landed safely, escaping the flames. Jean herself prepared to jump next, but her maternal instincts wouldn't let her leave without ensuring Darnell was right behind her. Glancing back, she expected to see Darnell following close behind. Instead, the sight that greeted her was one of chilling devastation. Darnell was nowhere to be seen, lost in the chaos of smoke and fire. Too terrified to take the two-story leap, Linda Darnell chose to climb the stairs and make a desperate run for the front door. Tragically, she never reached it. When firefighters arrived, they found her lying on the living room floor, her body severely burned, with injuries covering 80% of her skin. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, but despite their efforts, it was too late. On April 10th, at the age of just 41, Linda Darnell passed away, bringing her tumultuous and tragic life to a heartbreaking end. What are your thoughts on Linda Darnell's life story? Do you think her struggles were a result of her own decisions, or were they rooted in the difficulties of her upbringing? Share your opinions in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you and keep the discussion going. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this, and we'll catch you in the next video.